Today we're going to be talking about multiplying fractions. And we talked about this probably back in March, February, something like that. So we are going to go back through and review it today. And there's a couple things to know about multiplying fractions. When you multiply or divide fractions, you do not have to find a common denominator. So whenever we multiply, sometimes now that you know how to add and subtract fractions, you'll want to try and find that common denominator. You do not have to do that with multiplying fractions. So if you guys want to take notes or anything like that, you need to get your math notebooks out now. That way you can write down some of the examples that I'm using and things like that. Today you're going to be working on multiplying fractions task cards. However, they are not just going to be 1/4 times 1/2. It's going to be word problems. So you're going to be working through those, and you're going to need to be able to identify the words in there that help you to understand that they are multiplying fractions problems. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is multiplying whole numbers and fractions. And this is just one way to multiply fractions. So we're going to talk about this starting off first. And our first example right here is 3 times 2 11ths. Well, whenever we multiply a fraction, or whenever we multiply a whole number, there's something that we have to do before we can actually multiply it. Can anybody tell me what that is? Right, we have to put the whole number over 1. So that's how we make it a fraction. So this equation is actually going to look like 3/1 times 2 11ths. So just like that. Now, this is a problem that I can actually solve, so I can go ahead and solve it. I know that 3 times 2 is 6, and I know that 1 times 11 is 11. So therefore, my answer to that problem is, 6 11ths. Now, I have my other problem down here. It is 5 times 6 7ths. And the same thing, I have to make my 5 into a fraction. And how do I do that? Well, I have to put a 1 underneath it. So I have to do 5/1 times 6/7. So now I can multiply straight across. 5 times 6 I know is 30. 1 times 7 I know is 7. Alright, now this right here is called a improper fraction. Good. In order to change an improper fraction into a mixed number, I have to do a certain operation. Can anybody tell me what operation that is? Good, division. So I need to set up a division problem. I need to figure out how many times 7 can go into 30. Well, I know that 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 4 is 28. So that's probably right. Can go in there 4 times 28. I subtract, and I'm left with 2. Now, this division problem right here gives me a mixed number. This up here is your whole number. This is your numerator. And this stays your denominator like it was in the improper fraction. So, I am left with 4 and 2 7ths as my mixed number. Okay? So, multiplying whole numbers and fractions, pretty simple. When are you going to see multiplying whole numbers and fractions? In recipes, they talk about doubling or tripling. If I double something, I multiply it by 2. If I triple something, I multiply by 3. So that's just one place that you could potentially see those types of questions or those types of problems. Next thing that we're going to talk about is multiplying fraction and fraction. So, for example, in problem number 1, it is 1/4 times 8/9. So, what do I have to do here? Well, I just simply have to multiply straight across the top and straight across the bottom. Nothing too fancy there. So 1 times 8 is 8. 4 times 9 is 36. Now I have to think, 8/36. Can that be simplified? Well, I see right here that they're both even numbers, so that means that they can both be divided by 2. So I can divide by 2, divide by 2. Well, 8 divided by 2 I know is 4. 36 divided by 2, let me work that one out. Yep, 18. Now, 4/18, still even, can still be divided by 2 again. So divide by 2, divide by 2, that is 2 ninths. So my answer to this problem is going to be 2 ninths. On the bottom problem, 3/5 times 2/3. Again, multiply straight across the top. 3 times 2 I know is 6. Multiply straight across the bottom. 5 times 3 is 15. My answer is 6/15. Now, I have to think carefully. 6 is even, 15 is not. However, there's something that can also go into 6 and 15. Can anybody tell me what that is? Right, 3. So I'm going to divide by 3, divide by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Therefore, my answer is 2/5. Does anybody see anything kind of funny from that problem? I multiplied 3/5 by 2/3. I ended up getting 2/5. There's a 2 right here, and there's a 5 right here. And there's 2 3s right here. So whenever we multiply a problem like this that has the same numerator on this side or the same denominator on this side or vice versa, I can just cross those two things out because they cancel one another out. And therefore, I'm left with 2/5. But that's just kind of a simple trick sometimes that teachers show you, and I'm sure Ms. King has taught you that before too. All right, last thing, and probably the hardest thing for most students, multiplying fractions and mixed numbers. Now, there's something that we have to do to these mixed numbers before we can actually multiply them. And what I do is I call that making them mad. When we make a mixed number, when we make a mixed number mad, we have to multiply, add, and keep the denominator the same. So there's kind of my way of remembering it is when we make it mad. So the first thing that I have to do for 4 2/3 is I have to multiply my 4 and my 3. So I multiply my whole number and my denominator. And I know that 4 times 3 is 12. And then I make a backwards C because then I have to go up to my numerator. And that's where I'm going to add. So then I have to do 12 plus 2, which is 14. Last thing, my D, is I keep my denominator the same. So I end up with 14/3 times 1/6. And I know that 14 times 1 is 14. I know that 3 times 6 is 18. Now, looking at this, can that be simplified? Yes, they're both even, so they can both be divided by 2. So when I divide 14 by 2, I get 7. When I divide 18 by 2, I get 9. So my answer to that fraction is 7/9. Now, my bottom number down here, I have 8 3/4. So again, I have to make that mixed number mad. 8 times 4, so whole number times denominator. That gives me 32. Make my backwards C, put my 32 up at the top. I'm going to have to add that 32 with my 3. So 32 plus 3 is 35. So I have 35/4 times 2/3. All right, now I multiply two fractions together. So 35 times 2, I'm going to have to work that one out over here. I don't know that one right off the top of my head. 10, carry 1, 6, 7. So that's 70/12. Well, now we have a improper fraction just like we did the last time. So I know that I have to divide. So I have to see how many times 12 can go into 70. Well, I know that 12 times 5 is 60. And 12 times 6 is 72, so that means that it can only go in 5 times. It's 60, I subtract, I'm left with 10. My mixed number here is 5 and 10/12. Can 10/12 be simplified though? Yeah, they're both even numbers, so I can divide by 2, so that leaves me with 5 and 5/6, which is my correct answer. Okay. Hopefully this has kind of rejogged your memory on how to multiply fractions together, fractions, whole numbers, and mixed numbers. If you have any questions, please make sure that you ask. Have a great day.